Hi, everyone. This is Douglas Taurel, and this is the Actress Podcast. Today, I'd like to introduce you to an amazing female. She's a combat veteran, a Purple Heart recipient, and one heck of a poet. I met her when I was touring my play, The American Soldier, in Granbury, Texas. I found her story incredibly inspiring, incredibly moving, and I want to share her story with you. So everyone, meet Seargent V. Welcome, Seargent V.
Thank you, Doug. You're an awesome man, and couldn't be prouder to be your friend. And the play that you put on is just outstanding. It moved me to my core, and I'm just tickled to have met you and call you my friend. And I'm honored to be on your show.
Well, that's yours. The honor is mine, and you definitely moved me with your story. You know, I wanted to start back a little bit with your family. I found your in your bio, what you shared with me. It says your parents were migrant farmers.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
Yes, sir.
Let's start from the beginning in a way.
Okay, so my parents obviously were migrants. They migrated from Mexico, of course, as all, pretty much everybody came from somewhere. So they came from Mexico back in the day. Dad was orphaned at the age of 6, believe it or not. He had no parents. He grew up in Mexico. Mom did have, I knew you were going to ask me that.
Don't worry. If you don't know, you don't know. It's okay.
I'm not sure. I know it was along the border towns of Mexico and Texas.
Around Puebla.
It was like, I don't know. I'm not going to lie. I don't know. But anyways, he grew up, in the border towns, and he used to try to come to the U.S. by himself when he was little, because he had to support his younger siblings, and it was hard on him being one of the oldest, believe it or not. At 6, he was one of the oldest. No. So he had to try to support his younger siblings, and he would try to cross into the States to try to make a better life for him and his younger siblings. And then my mom, of course, she had her parents, but they all came from a big family. We're talking about mom had like 14 brothers and sisters or something like that. And then dad, of course, he had a big family as well. And then he grew up by himself, came to the US, met my mom, one of the many times he was crossing over, settled down, here in the US. They became legal citizens after, many years of trying and they became natural citizens. Then we ended up being born, all of us are US citizens.
Yeah. And watch that pen, Seargent V. That pen, when you click it down, the audio on your iPad picks it right up.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah, when you smack it on the table.
Sorry.
Media.
They settled down, and I don't know what
where'd you guys settle down?
They ended up, moving around, because I have a sister that was born in California, one that was born in Burnett, Texas, but eventually they settled down in De Leon. But throughout the years, they ended up migrating to Wisconsin, and this was way back in the 60s, even before I was born. And they kept going back to the same farmer, which is Jones's Farms in Wild Rose, Wisconsin. And we ended up going back to the same farm with the same farmer for, I'd say about 20, 30 years. They just kept going back to the same place. And we grew to know the family, the Joneses family. They became like part of our own family after going back for so many years. It was like they were our second family. They knew us since, heck, they knew me before I was even, they knew my family before I was even born. They knew my dad, they knew my mom's side of the family. Yes, sir. I was born in Texas. but they knew all of us since, since way back. They got to know my mom's family because my mom's family was from Mexico. But then they heck, you know what? I just found this out not too long ago. The Joneses family sponsored my mom and my dad to actually become US citizens, because back then I didn't know that they needed a sponsor, and they actually stepped up and they sponsored my mom and my dad so that they could become legal
It was very,
citizens.
it was very cheap and easy back then because my dad was from Argentina, and I remember him helping his cousins and nephews. They would come from Argentina, and he'd take them over to the embassy, and I think within a couple of days they were U.S. citizens. I mean, it was really easy, and this was like in the early '80s, I remember, and it wasn't that difficult. It's nothing like it is today. I mean, it's especially after 9/11.
Yes.
So you were, and
Yes,
you were,
sir.
and you were born. You said you were born in Texas. Sorry, I missed
I
that.
was born in De Leon, Texas, which is, I settled and live in Granbury now, but De Leon's only about an hour away from here.
That's such a beautiful town. I mean, that's
It
such a,
is. I'm enamored by it and very blessed that, that we're here. I love it. It's home.
yeah, that
It's
was a
home.
great show. I mean, that was like a little piece of Americana. It was really nice. How long you been in Granbury?
We've been here fixing to be 5 years in July.
Are
It'll
your
be
parents
5 years
still,
in
are your
July.
parents still alive?
Um, we lost my dad to cancer in 2009, and my mom is still alive. She's going through her second round of breast cancer. She got diagnosed for the first time shortly after my dad passed away back in 2009. She got diagnosed in 2010, and then she got diagnosed again about 2 years ago with her second round.
Sergeant
But
V,
she's
can I ask a
tough.
favor? Can you turn off the TV behind you?
Oh, I didn't even know it was on. My bad.
Yeah, that's okay. Do you have brothers and sisters?
I have 4 older sisters, no brothers, which made very difficult for us growing up. Not only work wise, but my poor dad, having 5 females, 5 daughters plus my mom in the house, Whew.
That's I know. Well, I grew up with
Yeah.
5 women as well, because my dad was a merchant marine, so he traveled. So it was always just me and four women and my mom. And for the most part, it was pretty cool. There were a couple of days where I was just like, especially when I got in high school, I was like, oh my God, one of these women they need to leave. But
I
way
was the
too much,
youngest. Oh,
yeah, it was
it
too
was,
much estrogen running through the house. Um,
yeah.
and what made you decide to serve?
Well, to be honest with you, at a young age, I always, like when we used to go to Mexico and stuff, because we used to visit my grandma all the time, not all the time, I say all the time, but we used to go at least twice a year. My grandma still lived in Mexico, and I loved going to see her. She was like my favorite person in the world. She stood probably like she was real short, typical short Mexican women, real short and bubbly. She was probably like 4'5". She was real short, and she was always laughing. And um, you know, I was like her favorite, and she she was just my favorite person in the world. And whenever we would go, I would always see the hardships that they endured,
Right.
in the Mexican culture. Like we would go downtown Mexico, and you don't know how, you always think you have it bad, but you never realize it until you go to a third world country and you see how bad they have it. So to me, it was always about trying to help somebody else, because you don't, you know, you think you have it bad, but you don't realize how good you have it
No.
until you see somebody who's doing without.
Yeah, I remember my mom used to work in missions when I was very little, and she took me to a mission, I think down in Baja California, and I think it was around the Tijuana area. And I remember someone told me, it was a really poor part of Baja California, almost basically Mexico. And someone said, don't eat your food in front of people. And I was, how old was I? I was probably 7 or 8, and I don't remember. Anyway, I was, stubborn and did whatever I wanted to do as a, 8-year-old. And I remember eating my sandwich, and like 30, 40 kids came to the van and they wanted the sandwich, and they were shaking the sandwich. shaking the van, I was, my mom comes, I thought I told you not to eat in front of the kids. And I remember that image, and I remember just looking down at them, and I remember seeing, man, these kids are really, really hungry, and you don't get, obviously you don't understand what's going on at that age. But as I've gotten older, I remember that, it's one of these pictures, these images that's been tattooed in my brain. And I remember that mission. I remember what that hunger was like. And I also remember that when I went to Kilimanjaro in 2012, Africa. Yeah, someone told me, you realize, you don't know that you live you don't realize you live in a country that's number 1 until you visit number 7.
Right.
Like, and when you visit number 7, I'm sure you understand that when going to Iraq, like running water and electricity, when you flip it on, we don't think about that stuff here. Flush
Right.
it's going to flush, flip the switch, light's going to come on, turn on the computer, it's going to come on. So yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's really, yeah, most Americans should know that they should travel more, because maybe it'll make people a little bit more humble and appreciative of what we.
Right. And you don't realize it, because it's like, a lot of people think, well, Iraq, Afghanistan, other countries, but you don't realize that it's right next door to us in Mexico. You don't have to travel that far to see it. You can go right next door. It's right there,
Yeah.
And that's how it was for us, because for me, it's right next door. My family, my cousins, I've seen it right there. My cousins were going through it.
Yeah.
People that I love, people that I saw.
So that made you want to serve?
To me. Exactly. Because I thought, well, if somebody I love is going through this, how can I help? And even though I know that we weren't at war with anybody like that, but it made me think, how can I better serve somebody? How can I better, how can I help? How can I, put what I can do to use? How can I help? So when we would go down there, I thought, well, how can I, like, what I have, what I don't need, how can I give? So I told Mom, I was like, well, why don't we take stuff that we don't need? Why can't we give them our stuff that we don't use anymore? I was like, why don't we start giving them our stuff? I was like, we don't use it, we don't need it. So we started giving them our clothes that we outgrown, shoes, even if it, even if it didn't fit them, they could give it away to somebody that it might fit. So that's what we started doing, and we started carrying.
Yeah, you started. You're the American story. You started caring for other people. How old were you when you? How old were you when you joined the army? And what did you tell your parents? And what did they say?
Well, when I joined, I was a lot older. I joined in '98, so I wasn't like a spring chicken anymore. I already had a good head on my shoulders. I was in my 20s. Yes, and which so when I joined,
which is old for joining in vets, because a lot of kids join 17 or 18.
Right, and I had already been around the world, like not literally, but like I had already moved. I had already went to Georgia. Right. I went to Wisconsin. I had been to several states, and I thought, you know what, I need to do something, with my life. I'm not, I'm not fulfilling my dream. I need to do something. So I thought, there's something more to life that I'm not fulfilling, and I need to do something. So I thought, I'm going to join the military and I'm going to do something better with my life. So I decided to join the Army. And at that time, I decided to be an aviation mechanic because I loved mechanics and
Is that why you chose the
helicopter.
Army? That's why you chose the Army
Yes,
instead of anybody else? Any of the other branches?
right.
What did your
So,
mom? What did your mom and dad say?
well, they kind of were not. My mom was freaking out, of course, because
Of
I'm the
course,
baby girl. And then my dad was just proud because I was his tomboy.
right.
So he was just tickled, and he wanted me to wear my uniform everywhere.
Oh, that's so
Everywhere I went.
awesome.
He's like, ponte el uniforme, ponte el uniforme. And, for those who don't speak Spanish, it's like,
Yeah.
wear your uniform,
Yeah.
wear your uniform. And everywhere I went, and I got to the point where I was like, Dad, if you love the uniform so much, why don't I just bring you one and you can wear it?
Yeah, he was a
Because
proud.
he was just so
proud immigrant father. I mean, my dad. I was, me and my younger sister were the first ones to go to college, and my friends would tell me that when they would speak to my dad when I was at school, at college, at Ole Miss, he would say, "My son's in college. My son's in college, and my son's in college right now." I mean, like what do you want to eat? I'll have a burger, and my son's in college. And he was so proud that we were in college. Because
yes, sir.
he was just so. I know that I can see your dad doing that. Do you remember that moment when you told your parents?
Yes, sir, I do. And my
Where were you
mom
at?
was like,
In the kitchen?
I was at home, and my mom was not happy, and but I told her, I was like, Mom, I need to do something, and I want to better serve, and I want to serve my country, and I need to contribute, and I need to do, I need to do something with my life. And,
Right.
She understood. She wasn't happy about it. She was worried for my safety. And then when I switched MOSs and I told her why I did it, of course, that just ruffled her feathers even more. When I switched over to the Intel aspect of it, that just did not make her, happy
Happy.
at all. And, of course, by then I was,
And
go ahead,
what year was this when you finally joined? This was 98, right? So 9/11
98.
9/11 hadn't happened yet.
No, sir. No, sir.
No.
I switched over, shortly after 9/11 happened is when I switched over. It's actually um let's see, 9/11, and then I switched over shortly after that. So by December 2001, I was moved to um Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri.
Right.
And Mark and I were planning, because I was already with Mark by then, and we were planning to have a wedding that, to get married. And then when that happened, of course, we didn't have a wedding.
But before we
because
get to 9/11, we started going into your deployment. Tell me about boot camp, because women weren't. I mean, especially in '98, women really weren't being talked about in the military. And I mean, you girls didn't even see combat to 2015. So, what was boot camp like for you? And do you anything that's you remember specifically about boot camp?
Boot camp, I'm going to be really honest with you. Boot camp for me was a breeze. I had no problems with it.
Why were you in shape? Super in shape?
Well, the drill sergeants, I'm not going to lie, the drill sergeants loved me. Like, I remember one specific drill sergeant, his name was Drill Sergeant Heard, Heard. And this was at, when I went to boot camp, this was at Black Lions was the name of it. I got the plaque right there on my wall. It was at Fort Jackson, South Carolina. Right. And I I was in pretty good shape, you know, and I just remember he just was like, he was like, I was doing like, we did a 2-mile run and I had twisted my ankle and I still finished the run. And then I remember doing like the field training and stuff. And he was always, you know, he was like, I had the war paint on and I was doing all this crazy stuff. And I was just grinning ear to ear. And he looked at me and he's like, you live for this shit, don't you? And that's how he said it to me. And I was like, I do. I love this.
I love this.
You know, there was other females that were just, you know, I'm not going to lie. There were some females that were, you know, just, you know,
Crying.
You get some females that are just too
girlish,
too prissy. Yes.
Yeah.
And then some of them are too problematic, too dramatic, drama queens. And then you get some of us that are like me that are gung-ho. And I like to think of myself as gung-ho because I was always down for whatever. And I still am. I'm one of those that if it needs to get done and you need to get dirty, I don't care what it is, I'll do it. I don't have any problems.
That comes across. That, I mean, I can see that. I mean, that comes across you. You seem someone really easygoing. I mean, since I've known you from Granbury, you really easygoing, really chill, really like, you know, sure, no problem. And I've interviewed other vets and female vets who've told me stories of in boot camp of girls with a lot of drama, you know, and girls looking at guys and you know, looking at that's you know, that soldier, you know, that I want him now and all that. And she's like, I interviewed somebody, I won't share her name, but she was like, you know, would be in these barracks, you know, in these crappy barracks with rats and these girls would just be catfighting over some guy that they couldn't even have, you know. And you're just like, Jesus, does the drama ever end?
Yes, that's how it is. And I just was like, I had Mark, and we've been together 20 years now, or it'll be 20 years.
You had your man. You found your man. You like, I found love. I don't need to get into anything. I'm good. I'm done.
No, I'm done. 20 years. I don't need nothing else. I'm happy. Even though he pisses me off sometimes, it's all good.
What do you remember about 9/11? Where were you at when it happened?
I wasn't even in Missouri yet. I don't remember where I was at, but I remember I was watching TV and I seen it and I was like, is this even real? I mean, to me, it just seemed like it was a movie. Like,
were you at home?
It was, yes. And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe my eyes. And I remember Mark was there. And I was like, is this real? I was like, I couldn't, you know, and it was a very surreal.
I remember I was coming out of the North Towers when it happened because I was already in Manhattan.
You telling me that.
And what I remember it was like a year before that, or 2 years, there was a movie called Godzilla. And there was this one scene where Godzilla is basically, he's coming through the city. And everyone in Broadway has their cars are parked and everyone is looking up at Godzilla like, oh, you know, what's going on? And I remember doing 9/11. I remember someone said she was crying. Her name was Karen. And I said, what's going on? She goes, a plane just hit the World Trade Towers. And so I remember I ran out and I felt the vibration from the second one, because the first one, no one knew what was going on. And I just remember very clearly being on Broadway, all the cars were parked. So you couldn't move between cars. So I remember sliding over a hood and looking up and then also seeing everybody else look up. And I just remember for that brief moment thinking, this feels like a movie. I mean, this feels like I was on set somewhere, you know, like feels like a movie. Like, is Godzilla coming up? But of course, we were in Lower Manhattan. We were looking at the Twin Towers that were on fire. And so, yeah, I remember it just felt like a movie. Just didn't your brain was seeing it, but couldn't put two and two together. Did you know? Did you know at that moment you were going to war?
Yes. Like I knew that, for lack of better words, shit just hit the fan. And I remember where I was at. I remember I had flown home because my sister, my oldest sister, had gotten diagnosed with something that's called neurosister psychosis.
Yeah.
And I had flown home and I was supposed to fly out, but I missed my flight. That's where I was at. I was at home, but I was home here in Texas.
And then what happened? Your staff sergeant gives you a call and says, pack your shit.
Yeah, I need to get home, or I say home, but I need to get back. And I was like, what? And I said, I want to switch jobs. And I went in and I had to get tested again, because you can't get into the MI field just because you say, hey, I want to get in the MI field. You have to get retested. Right. So I got retested and I went into the MI field, and that's how I got into the MI field.
And do you remember when you got the call? It was your staff sergeant that calls you, right?
Yes, and they
you remember what he said to you?
They said, did you see what happened? And I said, yes. I said, I did it. I mean, I was like speechless. I really thought that it was not real. Like, I was dumbfounded, to me, it just seemed like a bad dream. When you see, I don't cry, for me to cry, but I was more pissed than I was anything else.
Yeah.
I wanted revenge.
Everybody did.
Yeah, I wanted revenge. And I was like, I want to get those bastards for what they did.
Yeah.
And it was just horrible,
A lot of people signed up.
Yep. And that's what prompted, I guess, a lot of people was that's why a lot of people did what they did.
Yeah.
And then that's when I switched over, and then the rest is history,
And so you got deployed to Iraq, right?
Afghanistan first.
Sorry, Afghanistan first. And then how many deployments did you do in Afghanistan?
I just did one deployment to Afghanistan. And
were you scared when you first got deployed? Because you're surrounded by men, right? You're on a big bird, big C-130, which people don't understand. It's a lot of people, and you're flying, like in a blink of an eye, you go from, getting fast food in Texas to all of a sudden in full, battalion gear with all your 80 pounds of stuff on your back, and all, getting deployed to a war zone. And, even though, because I always wonder, you're a soldier and you're getting trained for war, but it's one thing getting trained for war and one thing getting on a big C-130 surrounded by a bunch of other soldiers going into a war zone. You're like, oh, this shit's for real. Like,
I was nervous. I'm not going to say I was scared, because
were you surrounded by men on that first deployment, on that plane flight?
Well, there were some females on there too. And then when we got there, when we landed in Baghdad, in Bagram, we landed at Bagram Air Force Base, and we got there, and then they said, you're going here and you're going there, it was like they split us up, and we had a hooch or a tent, whatever you want to call it. And then they said, you're going to this hooch, you're going to this hooch, and you're going to this hooch. And then, the females are really petty at times.
Yeah.
And I don't care who gets pissed off. I'm speaking the truth. When we got there, it was like they were bickering and fighting, and I was like, man, just put me in the hooch with the guys, because they're less petty than the females. And then
And that was
when we
allowed?
got there, no, it wasn't allowed, but I thought, or just let me sleep outside, because then we got there and they put me in the hooch with these females, and females that I had never met before. Right. So I was like, how's this gonna work, So I go in there and I'm just me, and I'm like, got this like I don't care attitude, and I get there and I meet all these females, and this female doesn't like this female, and this female doesn't like this female, and this female's not talking to this female, and I'm like, oh my gosh, are we back in like elementary school or something? And these are all older females, they're not like, teenagers, some of them are younger, but most of them are older females. So I'm like, how is this going to work out, because, I'm in my 20s, and I'm like, we need to get along. We're all on the same team.
Right.
So I go in there and I meet this staff sergeant, and her name is Sergeant Cujo, Cujoe.
What a name.
And she's just awesome though. And she is from where is she from? She's from another country, but okay. She's awesome. And I talked to her and she's like, well, so-and-so and so-and-so don't get along, and you're sleeping right across from so-and-so, and she doesn't like so-and-so. And I was like, well, I'm going to take care of that. So I go in there and I'm like the peacemaker. So I go in there and I was like, we're all in here and we all have one common goal. And I was like, let's all work together, and I was like, we all need to get along, So I end up trying to make everybody get along. And then she says, I don't know what you did, Sergeant V. She's like, but, she's like, you made peace and everybody likes everybody now. She's like, so whatever you did, keep it up. So I made everybody get along in there because I threatened to beat the shit out of everybody. Right. So that's how I made the peace.
Well, but good energy is good.
More violence.
I mean, good attitude, good energy, good attitude, having a positive attitude, it's infectious, man. It infects people, just like negative attitude and having a negative energy infects people the other way, So when you're surrounded by someone who's like optimistic and happy and has a good energy and is pragmatic, you're like, I mean, for some people, nothing changes them. They're, they're assholes no matter what. But for others, they're like, yeah. That seems funner, I'll hang with that girl, and then they change, and then, it's like a domino. It's like a spirit that starts infecting everybody. I mean, I know as an actor, I see that all the time in productions or on sets, it's the hardest thing as an actor to be on a set, because actors love to bitch. They just love to bitch. The food sucks, or my role's not big enough, the money sucks, or I'm not getting any work, it's like, okay, everything sucks about being an actor. We all got it. Okay. It's not an easy profession. Can we just focus on what's positive? So you really have to steer, and you'll always meet somebody on a set or on a production or somewhere that has this horrific negative energy. And you just have to kind of like, right. And once you spot them, you're like, you put an X on them. Okay. Stay away from him or her. Don't talk to them, because they drag you into it. They start being catty, and then you start being catty. And then all of a sudden your whole energy changes, and right. So it's really infectious. What did you think about Afghanistan? Like, what was your whole thoughts about being in Afghanistan? The people,
Afghanistan, the people were awesome,
which
the country itself was beautiful. I made friends with the local nationals, believe it or not.
No, I believe it. I've heard that.
The local nationals, like in the chow hall, because we had some of them working in our chow halls
as interpreters.
And yes, and we worked with interpreters too. And like in the chow hall, like I worked the night shift. So I worked from 6 at night till 6 in the morning. So when we would go in for breakfast at 6 in the morning, they would pull out, they would pull off the drinks, like the soft drinks and stuff, and they would put up like the milk and the OJ and the healthy stuff that I don't like. I stay away from the healthy stuff. I like sodas and stuff like that.
That's that Mexican in you.
Yeah. So they would, when I would go in the mornings,
Me gusta dulce.
the dulce. So when I would go in the mornings, the local nationals, they got to know me. Yeah. And so I would go in and I would shout out something in their language and they would know it was me. So they would pull out, when I'd get to the line, they'd go to the back and they would bring me 2 Dr. Peppers. Every morning, they would have 2 Dr. Peppers for me.
In the morning?
In the morning, just for me.
Chica.
Not for anybody else, just for Seargent V. So everybody else would be like, why is she getting Dr. Peppers and not us? And they'd be just for Seargent V. So they would bring me the Dr. Peppers. So I was like catered to, they'd have my Dr. Peppers.
Well, I mean,
they had me on.
Especially in the beginning of the war, they were happy that you were over there, that we were over there as a country, right. So the bitterness hadn't started yet. And so if you treated them with respect and kindness, they repaid you tenfold,
Right.
They were really happy. And I heard amazing sunsets, right?
Yes, I've got some beautiful pictures. I'll text them to you or
you gotta
email
share
them to you. I'll email them to you.
I like to see some pictures of sunsets. I love sunsets. Sunsets and sunrises. I would, I'm addicted to sunsets and sunrises. I get up early in the morning, 4:30 in the morning. And my favorite thing is when I'm jogging, seeing the sunrise come up on me, or at dusk, seeing the sunsets. Texas has amazing sunsets. New York has some breathtaking sunrises. But I heard, I talked to another vet. I can't remember if it was a she or he, but he said that Afghanistan had some amazing sunsets.
Yes, it's beautiful.
It's a desert. So I can imagine. Yeah, and I heard it's a beautiful country. It's beautiful people. And you did one deployment in Afghanistan. Did you go to Iraq afterwards or no?
Yes, I did. I went to Iraq. I went to Afghanistan, and of course, we have to go through Kuwait to go to Iraq. And then we went to, funny story about going to Kuwait though.
Tell me.
So we're going to Kuwait, right? And we're going through Kuwait to go to Iraq. And so I always have to I'm addicted to Dr. Peppers. So I had a cooler of Dr. Peppers. And ice is very hard to come by because there is no ice.
Right.
So it was me and a couple of our sergeants that were with us, and we're in our Humvee, and we're going, to Iraq. And I had my Dr. Peppers back there, and I was like, why the heck am I missing Dr. Peppers? I was like, where are all my Dr. Peppers going? So there was a sergeant named Sergeant Hadid, Hadid, an American soldier, but and what he was doing was when we were going into these little towns, he was giving them to the little local national kids. He was tossing them out to them. Man, talk about me losing my temper because he was giving away my Dr. Peppers. You don't mess with
my Dr. Peppers.
I will. You don't do that.
I'll gut you, boy.
That's what I said. I was like, you can give away. I was like, that's why I bought Cokes. I was like, the Cokes are to give away to the kids. It's like the Dr. Peppers are mine. It's like the Cokes for the kids, Dr. Peppers are Seargent V's. You don't do that.
I like Dr. Pepper too.
But that was a funny story because he was throwing them out to the kids. And I was like, why am I missing so many Dr. Peppers? But that's what he was doing.
Yeah,
but, Iraq,
And Dr.
was
Pepper for them, I mean, that was like, they, for, Iraqi kids, I mean, they've never had a Dr. Pepper.
no,
It's like you were
no,
passing
and
out gold bars.
yes, and it really is, because to me that's like liquid gold. That's like, that's like, for me, that's my, I don't drink them as much anymore. I've kind of laid off of them,
Right.
but
And
we live in where the area in which we live, you should know that there's a Dublin, and that's where they were made.
oh wow.
But
Yeah, that's
yeah,
right. I think they're manufactured in Texas. There's a distributor,
yeah.
a big Dr. Pepper distributor in Texas.
Yes, sir.
I think I remember
Yes,
that.
sir.
And what year was this when you were in Iraq?
I was in Iraq in 04.
Oh, 04. So you were in Afghanistan, what, in 03?
Right.
So you
I
were,
had back-to-back deployments. I
so,
volunteered to go to Iraq. I was only home for like less than a month.
and were you married then?
Yes.
What was that like when you told him, or was that tough? Was that?
Oh yeah. Well, when I came back from Afghanistan, things were already changed within myself. Like I came back with like, I just wasn't me, the same Diana I was before.
Did you start seeing combat already in Afghanistan?
I had been in predicaments in Afghanistan. I wasn't like in any pew pew situations, but like I had been where it got pretty scary situations.
Right.
But and I had been in some
And
situations that
you hadn't had your injury yet.
no.
Okay.
And then it wasn't until, when I came back, like my husband, he could tell that I had been in something, and I didn't share with him what had happened, but he could tell that I wasn't the same Diane as I was before. So something in me had changed, and he could sense it, and my family could sense it, but I never talked about it.
Yep.
So by then, the personality, change in personality was already starting to develop. You know what I mean?
What was
Like
the thing
What was the
thing? What was the thing that frustrated you the most when you came back that first time?
I can't quite put my finger on it, to be honest with you. It was just a bunch of different things that happened while we were over there that I never talked about, that I wish now that I had talked about, that I had put it out in the open, and I think that a lot of females now, I think that they should get it out in the open, as far as like military sexual trauma,
Right.
as far as higher ranking NCOs, trying to
Advantage.
right, they need to talk about it.
You think that happened a lot over there?
Oh yes, more so than a lot of us care to admit. But with me is that I had an NCO that was there for me, and he believed what I had to say, and he supported me, and he took
Right.
me out of the situation.
You were in.
Yes, and that's what helped me. But
I heard that story from another female vet that I was interviewing. She's one of so I'm trying to add these female characters, and I've crafted them out. But so I interviewed 4 women, and she had a similar situation. And it's nice to hear, just like the rest of the world, military is a microcosm of society, but there are good people out there, and she was taken out of a bad situation. I don't know if I can't remember. I get so confused on NCOs. I know what they mean, non-commissioned officers, but for some reason, my brain I can't figure out, because non-commissioned means they're not actually military, but it is. I don't get it anyhow. We won't go into that that thickness of my brain. But yeah, it was, she told me. And so it's just, there are good people in the military,
Right.
And there's also
Right.
assholes. There's also just like,
Right.
just like society. And so then you came back and things were different a little bit. So then you just said, you probably, I'm guessing that you felt, fuck this, I'm going back. I'm going to go. I don't feel comfortable here. I feel much more comfortable in my boots back over there. I'm going back.
Right. So I went back and
Iraq.
I went to Iraq.
So why not Afghanistan? Did they choose, or did you choose?
No, well, see, the thing was that we were getting split up. Our battalion was going to get split up, and I told my husband, I'm going to end up going to Iraq one way or another, sooner or later. I said, so why not go back with the group of people that I've already served with in Afghanistan?
Yeah.
I thought I would rather go back with somebody that's already been overseas and knows what they're doing, instead of going back with a bunch of what I call newbies that don't know what they're doing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That haven't been overseas, that don't know how to handle themselves or know what they're doing. So I said, I'm going to go back. Well, then when I thought I was going to go back, my chain of command had another idea, and he said, no, you're not going to go back. They said, go get your knee looked at, because I had problems with my knee. They said, well, you heard it, go get it looked at. So I said, okay, I'm going to go to sick call. So I went to sick call to go get it looked at. So I said, okay. They said, I need surgery. I have a torn meniscus. So I said, okay. They said, well, okay, you're gonna have a torn meniscus, go get it looked at, go see when they can do surgery. So I said, okay. So I said, I had, I said, okay, I'm not gonna go. I had gone it through my head that I wasn't gonna go. Well, then I told my platoon sergeant, I said, I got back from sick call, they did this and they did that. And, this was over time, because I was only home for like a month. They said that I have a meniscus that's torn. They said that I'm going to need surgery, and he said, well, it sucks to be you, go back. The commander wants to see you. He wants you to report. And I was like, okay. So I go in and I knock on his door. And I said, how you're supposed to report. I said, and he's like, you've got like 4 hours to go pack your A bag and your B bag. You're going to Iraq.
Wow.
And I didn't even have to.
With a torn meniscus?
I didn't even have time to tell him. I didn't have time to tell him anything. So I just, the only one that knew anything was the other sergeant, the platoon sergeant. I didn't have time to tell him crap. I didn't have time to tell him anything. So nobody knew,
And how many deployments did you do in Iraq?
I just did that one.
That one.
And so I go, and then I'm like, okay, I'm hauling butt.
Watch that pen, Seargent V.
Oh, sorry. Sorry.
All right.
So anyways, I go back from the base, which is about, I'd say maybe 20 minutes from the base to my house in New York. And I am like hauling butt, because by the time I get both bags ready and get them loaded into the Connex, I have to lay everything out, make sure I have everything that I need. So I am speeding. I'm like speeding, no lie. I'm like hauling butt. I get pulled over, of course, for speeding. Cop pulls me over. He's like, do you know how fast you're going? And I was like, I got a pretty good idea. Going like 80. He's like, do you know what the speed limit is? Yeah, it's about 50. He's like, why were you speeding? I said, well, I got to go get my A bag and my B bag. I was just told I got 4 hours to get all my crap ready and go put it in the Connex so that I can deploy. And he's like, all right. He's like, I'm gonna let you go, but you be careful. I was like, Roger that. So he lets me go. I get home and I tell Mark. And Mark is livid. I mean, he is pissed, because he's like, you just got back from Afghanistan. And he's like, don't be surprised if when you come back, I'm not here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, he was on the verge of leaving me. I mean, when I got back from Afghanistan, he flat out told me he wanted a divorce, and here I am leaving for Iraq.
That as a female, hearing you tell that, I mean, I've heard it from men tell that side of the story, but, because a lot of times, women who experience either black heart or, people who know what black heart is, females who've been alone a lot back at home and their husband's been multiple deployments, and something that I learned through my research of creating the play, my TV series. But it's interesting hearing kind of your husband having a little bit of a black heart, and he was like, I don't like it either,
Right.
So it doesn't matter if you're male or female, the one who's at home doesn't like it.
He did not. I mean, he did not. I mean, he was like, it's hard, not knowing if you're okay or not. He's like, how many times did you call me from Afghanistan? And I'm on the other end of the line, and all I hear are explosions going off. All I hear are bombs. All I hear
is
is
that?
Yeah, he did. He's like, how many times did you call me saying you don't know if you're going to make it out alive? How many times?
Yeah, and that's the thing people don't understand. In the early 2000s, man, that's when the shit really hit the fan. I mean, that was when things were getting really heated up over there. The IADs just started, and that's when they welcomed us with open arms to now giving us middle fingers.
Right.
They wanted us out of there. And I lost my train of thought. I was going to say, but that was something I was going to ask you. But anyway, when you called me, he could hear the explosions.
Right. I remember Christmas Eve, I called him, and I was feeling sorry for myself because we were out there and it was Christmas Eve, and it was me and my buddy, just the two of us, and this was
That's the worst. It's the worst because it's 20. What's going on in the States on December 25th. Christmas music, some booze and presents and jolliness, and you're stuck in a bunk with some dude you don't really know, and up in the desert where there's no feeling of Christmas.
Right. It was just me and Connery. It's just the two of us sitting in this Connex, and we're all feeling sad, and we were just feeling sorry for ourselves. So he called his girlfriend, and I said, well, I'm going to call my hubby. I got a few minutes, so we picked up the phone and I called him, and then next thing you know, kaboom, and this is Christmas Eve, for crying out loud, and then I have to hang up, Mark hears this loud kaboom, and I don't even have time to explain to him what's going on. And I just like, hey, I gotta go. I didn't even have, time to tell him anything, and then, I called him, a couple days later and let him know, hey, I didn't die. I'm fine, but he's like, I know that probably scared the crap out of him,
Sure.
but,
Maybe you'd not be scared.
And I know that a lot of that stuff, probably got to him like it did to me, but,
yeah, well, I mean, PTS is shared. I mean, that's the thing that I've learned, in my many years being around the military and military people and families. It's shared, it's not just the veteran who carries it. It gets passed on to the family, either to the whole family. from the son to the wife or husband, whoever is on the opposite side. And
Right.
yeah, because, you know, he loved you. And I would have to, oh, I know what I was going to say. I mean, I would have to guess another reason why you decided to go back is something that I've heard, you know, you didn't want to leave your friends behind.
Exactly. And, you know, and like I said, I would rather go with the group of people. It's like, who better to have your back than somebody that's had your back once before? You know what
Yep.
I mean?
And, you know, no one has ever, I mean, when you serve, especially when you serve in a war zone, you'll never be, I mean, you'll never be as close to men and women who are over there with you ever again. I mean,
right.
You're in, you know, you're sharing a very special bond, and no matter how close you get with anybody or any best friend you have or colleague, or no one will ever be as close as those men and women you served in a war zone.
Right.
It's a and I mean, I know that from talking to other vets, and I can only imagine, you know, when you share fear and the risk of death, you know, that's a pretty tight bond. And you and then they have your back, you have their back, and you'll take a bullet for them, and you know they'll do it for you. And
right.
There's a selflessness over there, which probably is, you know, I would imagine a lot of vets when they come back, especially, you know, coming back from a war zone, Americans just don't have that appreciation of just simple appreciation. You know, we don't have the appreciation. You know, when someone has your back and has that selfless feeling, you come back here and everybody's about me. From me, you're like, fuck this.
Right.
I'm going back.
And it's like it's more than it's hard to put it into words, because it's like, it's a closeness, you know, when you're out there, you know, it's like you're breathing the same air. I can't even put it into words, because it's like, they're more than your brother, they're more than your sister. It's so much, it's a closeness. It's like they're a part of you.
Yeah.
They're your heartbeat. You are their heartbeat. You know, it's so much more than that. I mean, it's like, if their heart stops beating, it's like your heart stops beating too.
Well, listen, when you're willing to take a bullet from someone and you know they'll do it for you, that's a bond that it's going to be hard to replicate anywhere else.
It is, and it's like, you know, to this day, I miss them, all of them.
Wow.
All of them. You know, there's not one day that goes by that I don't think of any of my battle buddies. You know,
do you talk to them any?
Yes, I still keep in touch with, I'd say, about 80% of them.
Oh, that's great. I mean, I talked to other guys. I mean, I talked to, you know, Brian Eish. He's that vet that I think I've mentioned with you. He's on that documentary of A Father, Son, Soldier. It's a really good documentary.
Yeah, I watched it.
Oh,
the
yeah.
one that you sent me the link to.
Yeah. It's pretty powerful, right?
Yes.
Yeah, pretty crazy. You know, that all happened by accident, because they were interviewing his unit, and then they picked a couple of people, and then they just started following him, and then they followed him for 10 years, and then you got that whole story. But so I interviewed him, and I asked him, you know, do you still talk to your guys? And he said, no, not really. He says, I don't know. It's just, we all kind of lost touch, you know. And I've heard that from a couple of vets. I've heard some vets who share the same thing that you said, but yeah, I find that interesting, you know. I think it's personality wise. I mean, by no means do I try to compare this, but I was really close. I'm really close with a group of guys that I played high school football with. But I've always felt if it wasn't for me, we wouldn't still be in touch, you know, because I always made a concerted effort to call them and email them and stay connected and just travel together, invite them up to New York, you know, and kind of keep the bond together that we had, you know. But I've always felt like if it wasn't for me trying to keep the group together, that we probably would have just all disbanded. So I think, I would imagine that you're keeping them, you're probably keeping everybody together.
Yeah, I do. I reach out to a lot of them and I'm like, hey, just checking in on you. You know, if you need anything, I'm here. You know, if you
Wow.
need to talk, I'm here. You know,
When's the last
I
time you
just,
saw one of them in person?
well, that's a funny story. When I went to Maryland in November, uh, one of my friends that I had not seen since 2006, she lives in Pennsylvania. And I said, hey, Izzy, I'm going to Maryland to see Dr. Carey over at Johns Hopkins. And she said, I live in Pennsylvania. I'm gonna drive down to Maryland and I'm gonna meet you there. So we met over in Baltimore, and I hadn't seen her since 2006. So
Wow.
we met.
That must have been pretty emotional.
It was awesome. It was the best ever. I mean, I hadn't seen her since 2006.
Oh,
So,
I get emotional just thinking of it.
and you know, I wrote a poem over that, and it's called the Same Girls as Before, because she brought her fiance, you know, it's another female. And, you know, I said, I don't care, you know, I was like, I don't care if she's purple or blue. I was like, to me, you're still the same girl as before. And I posted a picture of us in the military when we were in a foxhole, and we were at a shooting range, and I'm short. You've seen me. I ain't that tall. And she's taller than me. And we were shooting at the firing range, and they kept having to bring over pallets for me so I could see over. And she's in her uniform and I'm in mine. And this picture was taken like in 2002 or something like that. And I put that picture of the two of us together. And then I put another picture of the two of us from 2021. And then I wrote this poem, and I was like, in my eyes, we're still the same girls as before, even though all these years have passed. So I seen her, you know, and it was the greatest feeling ever. I mean, she's like a sister to me. So
I just turned 50th, and there's a friend I used to hang with a lot. We used to call him Huckleberry Finn, and and we were really close. We were pretty close in high school, and we did on some really fun party trips. And he was a big hunter here in Texas, and we used to go hunting and stuff. And I haven't seen him in a while, you know. And oh man, when he came to the Granberry show, he was in the front row, and I told him, I said, hey, he called me up. He says, hey man, I think he had someone who lived there. He says, I'm gonna go see your show. I said, you serious? I haven't talked to him in a while. I mean, you know, 10 years, 15 years. Maybe even 20. And he said, yeah. I said, oh man, his name was Sid. I said, that'd be so cool, man. And he was front row. And I remember afterwards we had some drinks, and it was just like time gets erased. All the 20 years evaporated, you know, and it was such a cool, and we sat at the bar, and I remember he was with his wife and his kids. And I said, listen, you know, because you know, people change as you get older. You don't want to, you know, presume or overstep your bounds. You know, you don't know who drinks anymore. You don't know who, you know, you don't know how people have changed, especially when you haven't seen him in a while. So he was staying, because Granbury is a small town. He was staying at the same hotel. So him and his wife came with me. We rode back. We had a couple of beers afterwards, and we rode back and to the hotel, and I gave him a hug. I walked him up to his room. So then I just sent him a text and said, hey, you know, the bar's still open. I'm going to have a couple more drinks. You know, if you're around, come on down. Love to have a drink, but no worries. No pressure. You know, I didn't want to make it, you know, like, you know, he was down within 5 minutes, and we closed the bar down, and we told stories, and we laughed, and we, you know, shared, you know, emotional things. And it was so freaking cool. You know, it was such a special moment. Awesome. Yeah, it was pretty awesome. I want to get to your poetry, but can you tell me you were in Iraq when you had your injury, right?
Well, yeah, I got medevaced in '04.
Do you remember anything about your injury?
I don't remember too much about anything, to be honest with you. People have asked, and
Were you in a car? Were you in a Humvee or anything? What do you know? Were you walking around?
I don't remember. I was in a Humvee. I got medevaced. I woke up. I was in. I went from Baghdad to Balad, from Balad to
Walter Reed.
Germany to Walter Reed. And since then, I've had about, I think I'm pushing 50 surgeries now. The foot thing was more of a vertigo slash gravity thing.
What
That
was
one's took me a minute.
What was the injury that you had?
To be honest, I've had several. I've had a back, shoulder, foot.
No, but that big one, what was it? It was your
back, shoulder, foot.
So
Yeah.
all of that happened at the same time.
Yeah. But it's getting better. The head thing,
Those Humvees are not good for people, for soldiers' backs, are they?
they're back then though, the Humvees, they didn't have them up armored like they do now. They don't have much protection.
You know, that's crazy. You know, when I read about that, I was like, what? Like, you know, it's just so many things that happen in the military that it just, I couldn't, as a civilian, it makes your mind boggle. I could only imagine the frustration as a soldier when you're like, why would you not armor these? Like, I mean, hello, McFly. I mean, it's just mind-boggling out. You know, I remember McCain fighting for that bill to pass so those Humvees can get armor. I'm like, that should have been done on day one. I mean, that should have been like, you know, putting milk in your coffee. Yeah. Armor, you know?
Yeah.
Crazy.
You want me to tell you a cool story though?
Yeah, love it.
Have you ever seen that movie Black Hawk Down?
Oh yeah, I love it.
Okay. So after I got out of the military, there's a place in Georgia called, there's a program called Faces of Freedom. Look it up. It's a good program for soldiers.
Faces of Freedom?
Right. And it's used to be run by a guy called John McLaughlin, MC. I don't know how to spell it.
But I'll find it.
But anyways, he took us soldiers to an event. And I got to meet the real Colonel McKnight and the real Colonel Steele.
Oh, wow. Were they
cool? That was awesome. That was like, out of everything I've done in my life, that's like by far the coolest thing ever was meeting them.
Were they nice?
They were like, oh my gosh, they were down to earth. Colonel Steele, his arms were as big as my freaking, both of my legs put together. His arms were like,
you know, those guys, they, you know, it would be surprising if they weren't cool, because when you've experienced so much combat, for you to be an asshole, it'd be really weird, because when you experience that much a combat, you see so much sacrifice that you have just a different appreciation for humans, you know, for life, you know, treating people with respect is probably pretty high up in the priority compared to khaki stuff, you know, bullshit stuff.
One of the first things that Colonel Steele asked me, now this is the one that marched the soldiers out of Mogadishu.
Yeah.
You know, one of the first things he asked me was like, you know, what's it like for a female soldier being in the military? You know, and I told him, he's like, you know, but just really down to earth, you know, and he's sitting here asking me, you know, but what was weird was that he was in command when I was at Fort Drum. He was captain, but I didn't know who he was. Go figure, huh?
No, go figure. That is,
Yeah, and then Colonel McKnight, he's just, he was really cool. He was when I met him, it was at the same event, but he was one of the soldiers took his leg off. He was an amputee. He took his leg off, and Colonel McKnight was using it as a golf club. And I was like, who does that? So it was really cool. But those are, some
cool.
really cool stories. You need to look it up. Faces of Freedom. It's a really cool.
I wrote it down.
They took us to go meet Sean Hannity. He's a big supporter, and what's his name? John Voight. He's a big supporter too of the troops. So it was really cool. I got to do a lot of cool stuff, but meeting those two was like the coolest thing ever.
That is really cool. Did you when you were over there? I mean, did you were you close to anybody who was lost?
Yes, there was. What really hit hard was that the guy that I was close to, his name was actually Mark.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and he was a civilian contractor. And it made me think about my Mark, because he liked to cook too. So it was especially hard for me, because it just, it made me think about my Mark. And I was like, I would hate to think of anything happening
to him.
My Mark. Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that Mark, but tell me a little bit. What do you remember of him? He loved to cook, huh?
He loved to cook. He'd always cook us steaks. He was a big steak cooker.
Nice.
He was a really nice guy. He was a civilian contractor. He was just a really nice guy. He reminded me a lot of my guy, and I was just attached to him for that reason, because he just reminded me so much of my Mark.
How did you find out? How did you find out when he passed away?
I found out afterwards. They didn't tell me until after I was already at home, and it hit me really hard because, like I said, we were close, and like I said, he reminded me so much of my Mark. So it was hard, it just.
Were his steaks good?
Yeah, he cooked some mean steaks.
Where was he from?
He was from Texas, oddly enough, so, I mean, who else but a Texan is going to know how to cook a steak? Come on now. Nobody else but a Texan is going to cook a steak.
My next steak, I'll do it in Mark's memory. God bless him. May he rest in peace.
Yeah. We also lost, not at that time, but another good person that we lost, not at this time, but he was also a good NCO. He was a good friend also, but not during this deployment, but somebody that I'd like to mention. Also, we lost, he was from New Mexico, and he was in the military, and he retired out of the military. And then he went on to join as a civilian contractor. And he went to Afghanistan as a civilian contractor. And he lost his life. That really sucked, because he was a good NCO. I can't call his name right now.
But what do you remember about him? Anything specific?
Yeah, he was from Hobbs, New Mexico. And Halsell, that was his name, Command Sergeant Major Halsell. I knew I'd get it. And he was, I remember he was in charge of us when we were at Fort Drum, New York. And he was a linguist, believe it or not.
A what?
And a linguist. He kind of did what I did. I was a linguist also. And he made the best enchiladas verdes.
Oh.
And he made them with.
How was he able to do that in Iraq, right?
he didn't make them for us in Iraq. He made them for us when we were in
Fort Drum.
Fort Drum.
Okay.
And
okay.
he used Hatch New Mexico chilies.
Oh my God.
Oh my God, they were the best chicken enchiladas I've ever had.
I love spicy food. Well, may he rest in peace. What was his name? Say his name again.
Command Sergeant Major Halsell.
Command
Halsell.
Okay, I'll probably ask you to text those names to me so I can put them in the list. I just love Mexican food. I can turn a peanut butter sandwich into a taco. I mean, I just, growing up in Texas, my mother is Colombian. My father, he passed away. He was Argentinian, and
Sorry to hear that.
And I have a best friend who's Colombian, and when I waited tables as an actor here in Texas, so all the waiters were Mexican, so I picked up their lingo, no mames,
Oh yeah.
and used to drive my mom nuts because I was speaking this kind of Chicano, Texan, Mexican Spanish, and she was Colombian, and Colombians are very proud about their Spanish, and she's like, stop talking like that, but I collect salsas. I literally collect salsas. I can't walk by a jar of hot sauce and not buy it. So great. Well, I will think of Sergeant Halsell. Halsell. I'll think of Sergeant Halsell my next enchiladas. May he rest in peace. Yeah. Thank you for your service.
I can make some mean enchiladas too, though. I have to make some.
Well, maybe next time I come to Granbury, you'll have to invite me over for dinner. And
let me know. I think everybody seems to like them. I've only made some 3 times in my entire life because I'm not the cook in the family. Mark is.
Oh, okay.
Mark does all the cooking, but I've only made some 3 times in my entire life. So everybody seems to like them. So
when you finally, I would imagine eventually you were honorably discharged, and they told you, right, since you're not fit for service anymore. Was that tough?
Right. Yeah, I was. Well, they told me that I wasn't fit for duty, and I wasn't going to be doing the job that I was doing that I love to do. So I was like, if I'm not going to be doing the job that I was trained to do and the job that I love to do, I don't want to do it anymore. Right. I'm not going to be. I can't see myself sitting behind a desk. I just can't.
What was when you first came back and you were discharged and you were injured, what was the hardest thing those first few months? You remember?
The hardest thing was trying to get over everything, the injuries, trying to comprehend everything that happened.
You mean physically, right?
Right. The shoulder surgery, the back surgery, the foot surgery, surgery after surgery. It was one thing after another. It was just trying to get over.
So list all the injuries you got from that moment.
I've had 3 maxillofacial surgeries, 3 shoulder surgeries, foot surgery, back surgery, and then everything else is kind of secondary to it. I've had around about 50 surgeries by now.
50
I'm kind of lost track. Roundabout, everything else is kind of secondary to it, right? The ear thing is, with the craniotomies that I've had, it's all kind of.
And that's all from that explosion.
It's all kind of, what's the word I'm looking for? Help me. Like secondary, connected? It's kind of all intertwined.
Yeah, intertwined. It's good. Connected.
Yes, connected. So like I can't hear that well out of this ear right now. Like it gets muffled, and I've have to go in and get a plate put in. There's bone missing, and I got what's called something some kind of like a leak. I forget what they said. I don't know. Some fancy terms that the doctor gave me. I don't know. And then like just a bunch of secondary crap going on that.
How was Mark? You know, because he didn't want you to go back to Iraq, and then you come back and you've taken a good injury.
He was pissed. He was not happy. He was more like, I told you so, you know, but I mean, he wasn't like mad at me. He was more mad at the situation.
Right.
You know, he just wanted me safe, you know. He wasn't like, you know, he was supportive. I mean, he knew, you know, like everybody, I mean, when you sign up for something, that's what we sign up to do. You know,
Yep.
Nobody held the gun to my head. Nobody.
You had a job.
Yeah. I mean, it's like with anything else. I mean, all of us signed up to do something, and nobody's holding a gun to our head.
Right.
You know, and I'm not, you know, like any of my other friends that came back with injuries. I mean, we all have our crosses to bear. This is just mine, you know, and it's all good. It could always be worse, you know, and I'm good. I mean, I'm healthy. I mean, I don't have high blood pressure. I don't have diabetes. I don't have cholesterol. I mean, the worst of my injuries is just right now I'm dealing with this. So I have to deal with this thing. So
just because probably running a little bit out of time, but so you had some PTS, right?
yes.
And then is that when you started writing your poetry, which is amazing, by the way? Did you write poetry? Did you write poetry in high school?
No.
It's really
No.
good. It's really, I mean, obviously it's very deep and very dark, but it's good poetry. I was just talking to a friend of mine who is trying to write poetry, and I said, you know, poetry is a weird art. You know, you can either do it or you can't. I mean, you can try to, because when you read bad poetry, it is bad. I can't even do, you know, you can't, something about poetry, you have to have, it's an organic, innate skill that someone has to write things that rhyme and then make sense and still go on a different level, you know?
Right.
And you have that without a doubt. And I was telling her about your poetry. It's like, you got to read her poetry. It's so instinctive. It's so good, you know?
Thank you.
So beautiful.
It comes from my heart.
Oh, I know it does. Anybody, I'm going to share one of your poems. Your poems are very powerful. And so is that how you started? What made you want to start writing poetry?
Well, one of my friends, he lives in New York, and he called me one night, and he was on the verge of suicide. And I stayed on the phone with him for about 4 or 5 hours, trying to get him to put the knife down and not take the pills. And I was on the phone with him, and I had the other line with the police department, had my my laptop, or my iPad actually, and I was trying to find the number to like the VA, trying to get help for him.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to do all this. And then I stayed up and I just started writing a poem for him. And it was called
but before that moment, you never written poetry before?
no.
And why poetry? Why didn't you try writing a story or a love note or something? Why? I mean, that's such
I don't know.
it's such a specific art. It's so specific, you know?
That's just what came out. I don't know. That's just
I
what
bet someone in your family wrote poetry.
I don't know. That's what the good Lord put in my heart that night. I mean, it wasn't even night. It was about 5 a.m. And that's what just came out. All I did was grab a pen, and that's just what came out. And that's just what I wrote. And then it's like the floodgates opened, and then I just never quit.
Stop.
And I think I've got like 500 in there now,
Yeah, now
English and Spanish.
you're gonna publish a book.
Yes, sir. The good Lord willing. We're yesterday and the day before yesterday, we did the photo shoots for it, for the cover.
I'll be the first one buying that book.
Thank you. So we're hoping it'll go well, and 20% of the proceeds are going to go to non-profit organizations. We're going to put back 20% to help vets. Both there's going to be 2 different non-profit organizations that I'm going to contribute to help vets with. One of them is going to be an organization called Operation Finally Home. You need to write that one down. It's a good nonprofit to donate to, and that will help.
Sorry for interrupting, but Operation Finally Home. I raised like 5,000 right during the beginning of COVID because a vet reached out to me. He was telling me that he was having a hard time putting food on the table. There's a lot of food insecurity with a lot of military, low-end military families. And I was like, what? He goes, yeah, no, there's a lot of people who are struggling right now. And so he's like E7 below, they have a really hard time, because especially during COVID, they're usually dual income. Then they lost one income because everything was shut down. So I did a GoFundMe, and I won't ever do GoFund again, but that's a different story. I'll do a different fund. But I raised $5,000, right? So
awesome.
So I was going to donate every penny to any veteran group that would take the money, for food and security. And so I reached out to a bunch of people and a bunch of military guys, a chaplain. Oh my God, the bureaucracy was murder. It was like, I just want you guys to understand, I'm giving the money. Like, I'm not asking for the money. They're like, who are you? Why do you want it? Why do you want to give it? You got to fill this out. We got to do a background check. I'm like, it was to the point where I was like, I was going to give all the money back. And then finally, I was going to do the show up in Fort Bragg up in North Carolina. And so I knew someone there. She said, listen, I know somebody at the YMCA food shelter at Fort Bragg. They'll help you. So they finally said, yeah, absolutely. We just need to, have you fill out one sheet of paper, who you are and why you want to do it. And I was finally, and then I sent them all the money. And then, they took a picture with a check and everything. But I was like, oh, Jesus H. Christ, that was difficult. Like, I'm trying to give you guys money. It was so brutal. Anyway, I hope these profits don't give you that much trouble as the one that I had, the other ones that I had.
No, but mine is going to be directly through, like, once I get the book published on Amazon, it's going to be directly through them. Like, automatically 10% is going to go, to, Operation Finally Home, and then 10% to Rally Project.
Rally Project?
Rally Project is local to Hood County in North Texas.
Okay. Let me know, because I'll try to help you with these and support and donate as well.
Awesome.
Because I'm always donating to different funds, different veteran military funds. It's hard, sometimes you want to find the good ones, Yeah. And I know Wounded Warriors has a lot of bad rap, but I spoke to someone about Wounded Warriors and some different organizations. I spoke to a guy named Dan Lauria. He's a famous actor, but he does a lot of stuff with Wounded Warriors. And he said, even though the Wounded Warriors only gives like 20% of their funds to veterans, their 20%, their 20% piece of the pie is bigger than a lot of organizations, 50 or 60% of the pie.
Wow.
So they do a lot of marketing and shows and blah, 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 and a lot of money goes into all that administration, but they do it, I guess their mission or their business, what's the word I'm looking for? The business plan is, is basically do all those bells and whistles so you can have a big piece of pie to give away. So I don't know, but it's always, you're always trying to find the right foundations and the right organization to give them the money, because you want it, you don't want to go, no one wants to give money and have it go to administration, You
Right.
wanted to go to the vets, to the soldiers.
Well, Operation Finally Home, what they do is they build houses for soldiers. And
Oh, wow.
actually, they built my house. The house that I live in now, it was built by them. And
That's Operation Finally Home.
right,
I'll
right.
definitely
They
reach
built
out to
me
them.
a custom built mortgage free home that I live in now.
It's kind of like what Tunnel for Towers does, right?
I don't know who they are, but
Oh, they do that in New York. You never heard of them? Tunnel for
No.
Towers?
No.
Tunnel for Towers. Yeah, it's anyway, I won't go into it, but they do same thing there. The guy who does it, his brother died in 9/11. So now he basically he's taken on this whole mission about building vets, first responders, injured soldiers, widows,
Oh, wow.
everybody. He gives them a mortgage-free home.
Yeah, well, that's what Operation Finally Home did for me. They built my husband and my family and I a custom built mortgage free home.
Wow.
Back in 2017. And then Rally Project, what they do is, Rally Project, what they do is they help veterans and first responders with immediate needs. And I work with them also. That's why I chose those two organizations to help.
I'll reach out to them and I'll tell them that I know you, and then see how I can help them.
Right. That's why I chose those two organizations, because those are near and dear to me.
Yeah.
So I'll help them by hopefully my book goes, it'll sell and it'll do well. And then
I had a couple more questions that I just wanted to ask before we wrap up. But when you first came back, being a woman, because I want to ask this specifically to you as a female, as a woman, did people, how do I phrase this? Did people get, because they see a woman, they're like, they don't know that you served, right?
Nope.
Especially no one expects a woman to serve. No one expects a woman to have, receive a Purple Heart, and so
everybody thinks it's my husband.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm trying to phrase, but that's what I'm trying to ask. I'm trying to put that in an intelligent question. My thick brain can't do it right now, but
everybody assumes it's the husband that served and not me.
Not you, right?
Even now, they see my car and it's got vet plates on it, and they don't assume it's me. They just automatically assume it's my husband. He's the one with the short hair. He's the one that's all tall and, burly, and me, I'm just, short, long hair. I don't fit the role.
No, I know. And I've heard that quite a bit from a lot of female vets, going to places where there's a big gathering and someone knows that someone in the family, it was a veteran, and they buy the husband a beer instead of the woman, because they just assumed it was the man. Did that bother you?
It doesn't, because I'm not in it for the notoriety.
No, but but when you first came back, did it bother you? No,
it never did, because it's like, to me, I don't need the acknowledgement. I don't need the pat on the back.
Yeah.
It doesn't bother me even now. What does bother me is,
it bothered me. If I was you, I'd be pissed.
It doesn't, to me, it's like, it really doesn't. To be honest with you, it doesn't. My husband gets mad.
Right.
He's like, why do they think that I'm the vet? And my son gets mad. They're like, he's like, Mom, why are they saying that Dad's the vet? You're the one who served, not Dad. He's like, why are they saying Dad served? You're the one who served. And I was like, babe, what do you want me to do? Wear a hat that says I'm the vet, not him? I was like, it's okay. I was like, I don't need to prove myself to anybody. And I've always had that attitude.
You're amazing, man. You're a special human.
And I'm not, you're awesome. And I'm telling you the God honest truth. I have always felt this way. I do not need to prove myself to anybody. I am who I am. I've always been very outspoken. I'm an asshole. I am an asshole to the T. Even though there's not a T in asshole. Yes, I am.
I can't see you as an asshole.
I am. I am. I'm very outspoken. I am very, if it's on my mind, I'm going to say it. If it hurts your feelings, I apologize.
Well, that's not being an asshole. That's just being, outspoken. I mean, that's,
Yeah.
I just shared, my daughter came home, and, I try to, when raising a girl, you have, it's the balance, of teaching them to be strong, teaching them to have a strong voice, but, also not making them into bitches,
Right.
and
Right.
it's tough, because boys different. So she had a problem at school because basically everybody in class got everybody in her class got punished because some kids were making too much noise, so they all had to eat in silence. She was really, I picked her up from school yesterday, she was so angry about it. And so I said, well, why don't you write a letter to the vice principal? She goes, no, I don't want to do that. I go, well, if you want your voice heard, you need to express your voice. So she sat down last night and she wrote a letter, and yeah, and I said, and then that was the lesson I was trying to give her. I was like, you always speak your voice. Don't ever forget to speak your voice.
That's right.
But yeah, it's a tough thing. So I wouldn't call that an asshole. I think you're just an outspoken woman. I think women get the, my wife is very, she's a strong woman, I don't mean physically, but just in personality wise. And
yes, sir.
And that's why I married her. I was never the kind of guy that I could do well with, flowers. I was just like, I just get bored. I'm like, okay, this is not working out. This is,
yeah, I don't need flowers. Take me fishing. I'm an outdoorsy gal. But like I was saying, to me, I don't need to prove myself to anybody. I am who I am. Either you like me or you don't. But
fuck off.
I have a saying that I always tell everybody, and this is my saying, and you can take it or leave it, but I always say, and Lord forgive me, and my friends, if you're listening to this or if you're going to watch it later, I'm sorry, but I always say this: if it affects my eating, my sleeping, or my pooping, then I have a problem. But if it doesn't affect any of those three, let it be.
We're good to go.
We're good to go. But if it starts affecting one of those three things, then I have a problem. But if it doesn't, hey, we're good.
That's great.
We're good.
Let me ask you these two last couple important questions. What do you wish civilians understood about the military and women in the military?
I wish that they would understand, what we go through as females in the military, as far as like what it does to our mentality. They don't understand what we go through, not just as physical trauma, but as far as like the mental trauma that we go through, the sexual trauma that we go through. I mean, we as females, we go through a lot,
Let me ask you this. If I did a show and I do a female combat veteran story, let's say I do a show, let's say the whole theater is filled with female combat vets. How many, if you were going to guess, how many female combat vets in the audience you think had sexual trauma in the military?
I'd say about 90%.
90%?
Yeah.
90. That's a much bigger percentage than I thought.
Yeah. I'd say a lot of them have gone through it, but none of them will speak out because they're afraid of the repercussions, and they're afraid of
even as a veteran.
Yes,
you're out. What repercussions?
They're ashamed. They're ashamed because they didn't speak out, or they're ashamed to tell their family members about what happened.
You really think 90%? Now, is that because you went through it, or that's just from that?
I just from what I've seen, because when I was in, I saw it firsthand.
Right.
A lot of the times, from what I saw firsthand when I was up there, I mean, I saw it firsthand. I saw it with my own eyes. A male NCO harassing a female soldier, and I would step in and I would be like, hey, what's the deal? And the female would say, oh, it's okay. And I'd be like, well, no, it's not okay. Why are you letting him do this to you? Don't let it happen. I mean, if you're part of the problem, if you're going to allow it, why are you letting him grab your ass, or why are you letting him grab you in any way? I was like, you're part of the problem because you're allowing it. You think it's okay. You think it's funny. It's not funny. To me, it's not. You letting him grab your hoo-ha, that's not, to me, that's not funny.
No.
That's
How many percentage of women in the audience do you think were severely, had really bad sexual trauma?
How many had really?
No, if I had
I'd say at
a
least
theater full, half, 50%. Wow,
that's still half.
That's even bigger. That's still bigger than I thought.
Yeah, because a lot of them, you got to think about it. A lot of them are afraid to step up. A lot of them don't have, a lot of them are afraid of what can happen to them. A lot of them are afraid to step up. They're scared because they've either been threatened by their chain of command, or they've been threatened by whomever committed this crime against them. They're afraid. I was never afraid. I was like, this ain't gonna happen to me. I'm not gonna be a victim.
Right.
This NCO that tried to do this, he was a gunny sergeant in the Marines. And I said, this is not going to be me. You're not going to do this shit to me. I'm not going to let this happen.
That's just such a much bigger.
It is. It's a lot more problematic than what people are saying it is. It's a lot bigger problem than what people really actually think it is.
Wow. I have to wrap this up because I got to get to this. I forgot about this doctor appointment.
No worries.
What advice would you give any vet who's transitioning out of the military or dealing with PTS?
Find an outlet. Don't turn to drugs and alcohol, of course, but find a positive outlet. Turn to God, turn to the Bible. That's what I did. And I know it sounds cliche, and a lot of people might think, well, I don't believe in God. I don't want to read the Bible. I don't want to do this and that. Even if you don't, try to find a positive outlet. Go outside, enjoy nature, grab a fishing pole, go to the lake, go to the river, find something positive to turn to. There's a lot of bad things that happen, yes, but there's a lot of good things in life too. Don't just focus on the negative things. Try to stay positive.
Yeah, I mean, what did Brian gave me? He says, the first thing you got to do is you have to find an identity. You have to find a purpose, and you have to find something you find something to do that you love.
Right.
You found your poetry. You found your identity, I would imagine, with God, and you found your purpose. Your art can really become a purpose. And that's probably the challenge for a lot of vets. Someone asked me, what would you do? How can you, could they see my play, and they're like, what should we tell vets who are struggling? And I was like, I don't have the answer. I'm not even a vet. I just my whole purpose of doing the play was to say thank you and say that I care and remind everyone and to remind people, that we all should care and we should all understand the true sacrifice. So that's always been the goal of the play. But what I've learned over the years is now when people ask me that question a lot, and I was just asked that in Iowa, it's just that I think now what I've started saying is, not to give up. Like if whatever that therapy is, if talking to a therapist is not working, go find another therapist. And if that therapist is not working, Go do equine therapy, equestrian. If that doesn't work, get a dog, canine therapy, find, you have to resist the urge of giving up,
Right.
and because, you want to give up, and vets, I try to share that in my play, and I shared it in my TV series, but vets, you've been given the skill of discipline that most people don't have, and teamwork, and if they can just, when I wrote my TV series, I try to kind of hammer that at the very end, that vets need to use the skills they were given, brotherhood, teamwork, and discipline to find themselves out of whatever their dark hole they're in,
Right.
Would you agree with that?
Yes, I do. And I just think that, you don't need to let what happened to you define who you are. That
Right.
was what happened to you is what happened to you, and it's not who you are now. You need to find who you are and move forward, find a way to, make a new you, so to speak. I don't know, just like you said, with me, poetry has been my outlet. You need to find a new outlet for you, what's going to work for you. Fishing, it's always been my peace of mind.
That was funny you say fishing, because that was Brian's thing. That's what he said. He says, I'm fishing. And he told his wife, I'm fishing. And if you stop me from fishing, we're going to have problems. He says, I'm going to fish.
That's what I do. I mean, that's where I find my peace. I mean, I'm just so at peace in the water. I mean, my husband's has had to pull me out of the lake at 2 or 3 in the morning.
That's great.
Because I'm out there fishing. He's like, who's going to skin all these fish? Well, you are, sweetie. Not me.
So listen, I've had you on for 2 hours here. So let me,
yikes.
I want to thank you, Seargent V, for giving me the time to talk to you, share your story. I think it's a beautiful story. I think you're a beautiful person.
Thank you as well.
I think you're an amazing, and I believe our paths are going to keep crossing. So, just thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, and God bless you. And I love your show. And I'm just thankful that we met. The good Lord, put us in each other's path for a reason.
Yeah, that's been the amazing thing about this play is, I'm blind. A little funny story. I'm blind in my left eye, and when I was getting recruited out of high school, when I played Texas football, when you play Texas football, everybody, you're on the top of the list for being, for recruits to call you. And I told them I'm blind in my left eye, and they're all like, "Oh, hey, I think you're gonna have a good life, kid, but the Army's not for you. Hey, you think you're gonna have a good life, kid, but the Marines not for you. Hey, I think you have a good life, kid, but the Coast Guard's not for you." So I kind of just, whenever any recruit would call me, I would just tell them right off the bat, "Hey, before you go on to your spiel, I'm blind in my left eye." So I remember after all that, it was like a week, they all call you. They have a week when they all start calling you. And I remember just thinking, okay, I'm done with the military, and I'll have I'll never have a connection with the military because I was never going to serve or anything, And to see where I'm at now and the relationships I've built with so many veterans and how versed I am with the military, it's funny, I was like, life is so freaking funny, man. I mean, here I am. I know everything about every branch, or a lot about every branch. I wouldn't say everything, but a lot. And I'm connected to Green Berets, and connected to you, and female vets, and combat vets, and Air Force veterans, and pilots, and all these different sergeants, and all these different people that if you in a billion years, if you told me that I would be able to reach out to them, Vietnam vets, Korean vets. I got one Vietnam vet named Joseph Reynolds, and he just constantly, he's biggest supporter of the play, and he helps me so much. He's so kind, and I just would have never thought I'd have this connection with people like you who've given so much for this country, and you are the backbone of this nation. Everything that we experience, that we're able to enjoy and take for granted today in the United States of America, is because of men and women like you who've put on the uniform. And I personally can't thank you enough. And I'm a fan of yours. I'm a fan of your poetry. I think your poetry is so special and so amazing.
And I'm glad you're willing to trust me to come on here.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And thank you for having me. And God bless you. And thank you for everything you do. And keep up the good work with your play. I for one, am a huge fan. And I can't wait till you come back to Granbury again.
I will. Thanks,
Thank
Sergeant
you.
V. That's Sergeant V. And this is me, Douglas, on the Actors Podcast. And I just want to say thank you for listening.